Quest to Succeed. Chapter 2. Jay's dad used to help farmers in the sale of their surplus crops of wheat and peas, and sometimes barley and chickpeas. He advised them where to go to city market to get the best price. Some farmers could not go to the city. They were always busy with farming or family affairs. Jay's dad used to purchase their products, especially wheat and peas. Sometimes he hoarded these goods in his warehouse for a few months and sold them when the prices started to go up. He often took the agriculture produce to the city market the same day or within a couple of days. He never kept his own vehicle, but used to hire bullock carts to carry goods. He had contact with 2 bullock cart owners, Kartar and Samar. One or the other was always available. Kartar was a farmer, but he did a side business and used to carry Jay's dad's commodities to the city. When Jay's father could not go with him, Kartar was entrusted with the merchandise. He knew which Attis, commission agents, shop to go to. He would sell the goods and bring money to the village. The Atti, commission agent, had a place to park the cart and oxen to rest and eat fodder. There was also a cot, small bed for Kartar to sit and rest. He had drinking water facilities for both human beings as well as for animals. Samar was also a dependable ox-drawn cart owner. He was a building worker, but would give up his work for a day and take Jay's dad's wheat or peas to the city. His father used the same Atti, commission agent or intermediary, to sell the crop. If he did not need the money immediately in the village, he used to ask Samar to leave the finance from sales with the Atti. Samar was sometimes given a list of essentials for the shop to purchase. He knew where to buy these items from. He would bring the goods to the village in the afternoon and deliver at the shop. Jay's father used to go to the bordering villages to find out if farmers wanted to sell their surplus crops and needed money in order to pay their taxes and other bills. He used to take Samar and his bullock cart or Kartar and his bullock cart to those villages. They used to bring the agricultural products to their village and would take them to the town the next day. In such a situation, the bullock cart was parked outside Jay's grandfather's shop, where they could look after it at night. Sometimes Jay and his brother Gautam slept in the cart as security guards. If a cart was available in the other village, Jay's dad would hire it there and take the goods direct to the city. Jay's father was a good storyteller. When Jay was young, he used to listen to his dad's stories every night. At one stage, he thought that he would like to write all his dad's stories and become a story writer himself. He told his sister about his ambition. She said that she would tell him lots of stories, which he could write. His sister was studying in the village primary school. He, however, could not forget a story which his dad told him and his siblings. It related to humans as well as animals. Jay felt that an animal could be as sensitive and respond like a human being. As in many other stories in village life, it was about a princess who lived in her father's palace, but she was not allowed to go out of the building. No visitors were permitted to meet her. The princess had a boyfriend whom she liked meeting but had to see him outside the castle. She became friendly with a court servant who used to take her outside the royal residence, hidden in the ear of an elephant. When they reached the outskirts of the town, they would rest under a tree. The princess would come out of the elephant's ear, and the servant would fan the beast. The animal used to fall asleep in the cold breeze under the tree. The princess would go walking with her boyfriend. She would return within half an hour before the elephant woke up. She would then enter the elephant's ear and return to the mansion. No one knew about her adventure. Like any other day, the princess went out hidden in the elephant's ear. On reaching the outskirts of the town, the elephant stopped under a tree and she got out of its ear. The servant started to fan the animal who fell asleep. The princess, however, did not return within the scheduled time of half an hour on that day. The servant realized that the princess was late and the elephant was to wake up. He attempted to enter the elephant's ear. However, before he could do so, the elephant woke up. In indignation and rage, it killed the servant. When the princess arrived at the scene, she found the servant dead and the elephant was making noise in anger. Her adventure or misadventure was discovered by the king and his ministers. She was not permitted to leave the palace after that incident. Jay reflected that the animals were equally sensitive like human beings. Because of the underage, Jay was not allowed to go to school. He, however, stayed at home or at his grandfather's shop. He waited for another 2 years before he could start his schooling. He was sometimes restless and wanted to do something constructive. One day he thought of making a cart with mud and straw, which were freely available in the village. He had a design on his mind. His mother, however, discerned that she will instruct a carpenter to make a wood cart for him. She did not realize that Jay wanted to use his talent and skills regarding making a cart. He did not necessarily want to play with it as a toy. It was not until when he was almost 7 years old, his elder sister left the village primary, Jay started to attend the school. There he learned to read a book and write on a wooden piece called takti. He already knew the numbers and timetable. The teacher asked him to teach the numbers and timetable to his fellow students. The teacher was so impressed with Jay, he commented, as if Jay was born with all these skills, and he learned to count numbers and timetable in his mother's womb. He nevertheless learned oral arithmetic of his grandfather. Jay's primary school was co-educational. However, only about 10% of the students were girls, and the rest were boys. There were only 70 students altogether in the school, and they came from 5 close-by villages. Every village did not have a primary school in the 1940s. There was no lady teacher in that village until the 1970s, but the teaching standard of the school was very high. For Jay, there was no distinction between boys and girls. He helped everyone and would not distinguish whether a student was from his village or came from another village. He had good association with them all. The school held sports competitions, especially hurdle races, long-distance race, and long jump. Students used to take part in these sports and in physical exercises. The boys also staged a play from the epic Mahabharata. Jay was particularly fascinated with the drama when Arjun's son, Abhimanyu, faced 8 warriors. He continued to fight even when all his armaments were destroyed. At one stage, he turned the chariot's wheel into a weapon. Abhimanyu was eventually killed. The spectators had tears in their eyes. In the drama, boys had to play the role of girls because the parents did not allow their daughters to take part in the school play. They went to school only to get education, to learn to read and write. For these parents, extracurricular activities were not an essential part of learning. Over a period, however, that outlook and perspective changed. In his village, he noticed that a dramatic company used to come to perform Ram Lila, based on the life of Hindu god Ram. Ram was the son of King Dasharatha and Queen Kausalya of Ayodhya. The Ram Lila continued for 10 days from Ram's birth to education, his exile to forest, kidnapping of his wife Sita and her recovery. Ram, Sita and brother Laxman returned to Ayodhya, where people celebrated their arrival by lighting diva. This started the festival of Diwali. Jay was, however, fascinated with the story about the birth of Ram and how Ram and his brothers were born. King Dashrath and Queen Kaushalya had a daughter named Shanta, but they bestowed her to their friend Romapada, the king of Anga, who had no children. King Dasharatha and Queen Kausalya thought that they would have another child soon. King Dashrath, however, could not have any more children after Shanta. He did not ask King Romapada to render their daughter to them because she had by now become the princess of Anga. Dasharatha married twice again, but no children were born. Princess Shanta was a beautiful young lady. Once Rishi Asringa, a scholar and scientist, came to seek help from King Romapada of Anga. He saw the young princess and inquired about her siblings. The king said, "We have no other children. The king of Ayodhya bestowed her to us when she was very young." Rishi, sage. Asringa said that he was doing research on fertility treatment with his guru Vibhandak Rishi, whom he treated as his father because he, sage Vibhandak, brought him up. "If you wish, we can experiment medicine on you and the queen." But his condition was that Shanta should be given to him in marriage after the success of the experiment. Romapada could not decide on this request by the sage. He therefore invited his friend Dasharatha and Queen Kausalya to Anga. When they arrived, Rishi's proposal was presented to them. The king of Ayodhya did not like the notion that his daughter should be married to a rough-looking forest dweller researcher Rishi. He wanted his daughter to marry a prince and live in a royal palace. He was therefore reluctant to agree to this marriage proposal. Shanta nonetheless agreed to marry sage Asringa and for a rough life in the forest if she could have siblings. The rishi and his guru started their medicine experiments. The queen of Anga had a child just after 1 year and second child 1 year after that. The treatment was successful. After careful consideration and discussion with the queens of Ayodhya, King Dasharatha also agreed to the same experiment in his capital city. Rishi Asringa started the treatment and afforded the medicine mixed in kheer rice pudding, serving it in a cup, each to Queen Kausalya and Queen Kaikai. They obtained 1 more cup. Both the queens poured half of their share of kheer in that cup. Third cup was given to the middle queen, Sumitra. All 3 queens had kheer with medicine prepared by the rishi. After the maturity time, Queen Kausalya gave birth to Ram. Queen Kaikai gave birth to Bharat, and Queen Sumitra gave birth to twins, Laxman and Shatrughan. Since kheer was taken by the queens on the same day, they gave birth together at the same hour. But Ram was the firstborn and was, therefore, treated as the eldest prince and elder brother of the other 3 princes. Jay maintained that it was important to recognize the birth of King Dasharatha's sons and to acknowledge that fertility treatment existed in ancient India. In the Treta Yuga, during the period of Dashrath's reign, it was conducted first in the kingdom of Anga and then in the kingdom of Ayodhya. Treta in Sanskrit means a collection of 3. According to Hindu Puranas, 3 avatars, incarnation, of Lord Vishnu took place. The first was Vaman, the second was Parshuram, and the third was Ram. In Jay's village, the Ram Leela drama was frequented at night. This continued for many nights. The villagers customarily went to the nearby town to watch the Ram Leela performance, which was on a grand scale. It used to take place during the daytime and continued for 10 days before the Diwali festival. The villagers often compared the scenes and performance with their village Ram Leela. The story of Ram showed respect for elders, affection between brothers, and the sense of duty. It appealed to people of all ages. They did not necessarily follow these principles themselves or behave the way it was reflected in the drama. When Ram and his brothers had completed their education, the king decided to declare Ram as the crown prince and the heir to the throne because he was his eldest son. The king consulted the family priest, Sage Vashishta, before making his decision public that Ram would become king after Dasharatha. The youngest Queen Kaikai, however, objected to it. She wanted her son Bharat to become the king of Ayodhya. There was nothing wrong with that. Bharat was only an hour younger to Ram and had the same education and learned the same skills. He was equally large-hearted like his brothers. He was also fond of poetry and painting and authored poems himself. Queen Kaikai also demanded a 14-year exile for Ram from the kingdom and insisted that he should spend this time in forests. Ram agreed to go to the forest for this period. He was happy to obey his stepmother. Ram's wife Sita and his younger brother Laxman also resolved to accompany him and to live in the forest for the duration of the exile. 14 years banishment was chosen because at that time there was a customary law that if some owned a land or territory for 14 years, it would become his right of possession forever. King Dasharatha, however, did not like it. He attempted to persuade Queen Kaikai that he would make Bharat crown prince, and later he will become the king of Ayodhya. She should not impose the condition to throw out Ram from Ayodhya. Queen Kaikai did not change her mind and insisted that Ram should spend the suggested period in the forest. Ram was an obedient son and followed the decree by his stepmother. Jay disagreed with this kind of blind obedience. The consequences were not considered. He pondered over this incident of the Ramayana. The result was that as soon as Ram, Sita, and Laxman left the city, King Dasharatha fell ill and died within a few days. Laxman's wife Urmila had to stay in the city without her husband for 14 years. What was her fault that she had to live on her own without a husband? During the last year of their exile, Sita was kidnapped by Ravan, the king of Lanka. What was more, Prince Bharat refused to sit on the throne to rule the city-state. He went to the forest to persuade Ram to return to Ayodhya. Ram refused to come back to the capital city before completing his exile of 14 years. Bharat brought Ram's wooden chapals, cut down, and put them on the throne as a symbol of rule by Ram. He himself moved to a village, Nandigram, and dug a small hole and slept there on grass and leaves. He attended the state matters from there. He considered Ram as the real ruler of Ayodhya and told the citizens that he was acting on behalf of his elder brother Ram. This also put pressure on their youngest brother Shatrughan, who was responsible for safeguarding and the security of the kingdom. He had to fight many wars during this period. That was Jay's view about Ram's exile. In Jay's village, there were two brothers in a farmer's family. The elder one was interested in dramatics and dancing. He used to perform dance at the village Ramlila and in some other dramatic performances. His younger brother did not like him wearing a sari like a girl and dancing. Later he understood that dancing was an art. Not every person could perform or take part in dramatics. It was an inherited talent or was acquired through practice. When he was studying in his village primary school, Jay noticed that there was only one boy from the scheduled caste. He was there because his house was near the school. The other parents, from poor families and from the tribal communities, did not send their children to school. The tribal community mostly lived on the outer skirts of the village, and they thought that the school was only for villagers. They worked on farms with the village farmers and did some domestic work as well. They were exceptionally good at making utensils with iron for domestic use and agricultural tools like spades and other tools which were used for farming and for cutting fodder. They also made sickles which were used to cut crops. Sometimes these people were called ironmongers. There were no children from the sweeper scavengers or untouchable community in the school. Their work was not appreciated by the villagers or by the Indian society. It was a menial job, mostly conducted by women who carried the night soil excreta collected from cesspools in people's homes. They carried it in baskets on their heads. It often dripped over their face, reaching the eyes and the nose and sometimes the mouth. It was very smelly. The girls were asked by their mothers to carry the load on their head. They were also acquainted with the custom that they would have to do the same job when they get married and lived with their in-laws in another village. These people were also called untouchables. Jay did not like this practice and often objected to its taking place in the Indian society. Once, Jay touched one of the women who was standing outside his house. His mother asked him to change his clothes and have a bath before he could enter the house. He obeyed his mother. He, however, could not do anything. It was vicious and atrocious. That was the worst side of the biosystematics, taxonomy, and exclusivity practice in the Indian society. The Indian caste system has been identified worse than the class system in other cultures and societies.